Joining me now, Senator John Barrasso. Good morning, Senator. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
You wrote an op-ed piece about the START treaty, and I want to get to that because it plays into all this. But since this is the breaking news, I want to ask you about that letter which you apparently signed. Harry Reid's response is he says it puts into writing the Republican strategy that was here all along. Obstruct, delay, then blame the Democrats. What's your response?
It's been a month since the elections. The new Congress gets sworn in another month, and Harry Reid has brought only one bill to the Senate floor. It had to do with food safety. You know, the American people are a lot less worried about what's going on in the White House and worried about what's going on in their own houses, and that's the jobs, the economy, the debt, and the spending. And I did sign that letter, and the president, you know, the day after the election said we owe it to the American people to focus on their concerns, which are jobs. And right now we need to do that, and the way to do that is to provide some certainty so people can get hired, and the way to do that is you don't raise taxes on anyone in the middle of a recession, Chris.
But it does seem to be drawing a line in the sand, and it does seem to send a message, excuse me, that the Senate can only get one thing done at a time. And while I understand the Republican argument that this was a change election, I also have to say that 75% of people in our NBC poll said that they're afraid the country is heading for a period of division, with parties showing little willingness to work together or to compromise. So does this letter, in fact, send the signal that by drawing a line in the sand, the Republicans are all about business as usual?
The line in the sand and the message I think that this letter sends is let's focus on, as the president says, what we owe to the American people, which is to focus on jobs. So if Harry Reid wants to talk about don't ask, don't tell, or college benefits for illegal immigrants, or a treaty with Russia, that's fine. But we only have enough time in the next month to focus on what I believe we ought to be focused on, which is jobs, the economy, the debt, and the spending. So we need to freeze spending. We need to focus on the economy, keep taxes down for everyone, and then if there's time available, go to some of these other things. But the first focus ought to be jobs and the economy. So you're not willing to consider any compromise on tax cuts? No compromise at all? Tax cuts extended for everybody? You're not willing to make a deal on that? Well, I think that in the middle of a recession, you should not raise taxes on anyone in this country. And for the American people who say corporate profits that are all-time high, you look at compensation packages for executives, people making over $1 million a year, they see a disconnect between that and not extending unemployment benefits. Maybe let me put it this way. If your argument is that you have to continue tax cuts for people making over $250,000 a year because that is a mechanism for job creation, would it not follow that then, until those jobs are created, you would continue to help those Americans who have not been able to find a job and put food on their tables? There are a couple things you can do for people who are still looking for work, and one is to extend unemployment benefits, and I support what Scott Brown has brought to the Senate floor on a way to do it in a way that is paid. The other thing you want to do is give some certainty to businesses to make sure that they know that they're going to be able to hire people. We want them to hire people, and the way to do that is you don't raise taxes on anyone in the middle of a recession. Let me ask you about the START treaty. Now, my understanding of this is because of the way the voting goes and the difference between this and legislation is that this letter that you signed will not affect a vote potentially on the START treaty. However, let me talk about some other Republicans. John McCain now thinks that the GOP concerns over START can be resolved before the end of lame duck. He has said that. George Voinovich now indicating he may vote for it. Now, as I read your op-ed piece in The Hill out this morning, your concerns do seem to be broader than a lot of Republicans. Do you think there is room for compromise in this, or is it, as Claire McCaskill has suggested, part of a more obstructionist Republican Party? Well, once we focus on the economy, if there is still time remaining, then they may want to bring the START treaty to the Senate floor for a discussion and a debate. I think the American people are owed a debate on this. My concerns with it are it affects our missile defense, and I'm a lot less worried about Russia because this is only between the United States and Russia. I'm a lot less worried about Russia than I am about North Korea, and you saw what happened there this past week. We know that there's a scientist who's just come back to Los Alamos. He said he was startled by the sophistication of the North Korean lab where they're developing nuclear weapons. I worry about Iran and those rogue nations. Do you disagree with Senator McCain that he now thinks that some of these concerns over missile defense, which he shared, can be, that an agreement can be reached? Well, I'd like to remove the reference to missile defense from the preamble to the START treaty, and I brought that as an amendment in the Foreign Relations Committee on which I serve. The Secretary of State, she says, oh, no, it doesn't apply to the treaty. Well, it's the preamble, like the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people, of course it applies to the treaty, and I still have concerns. I want to make sure we as a nation are able to defend ourselves. And I'm less worried, as I say, about the Russians than I am about Iran, North Korea, and other rogue nations.
Senator John Barrasso, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chris.